I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making the Gilded Bracelet. Gather up the supplies that were just listed, and if you happen to need to purchase any, check out the links below. Also, if you want to say what your favorite colors are and what you're going to be making it instead, make sure to give your feedback in the comments section. As always, get out a nice workable surface, and let's get ready to begin. So to do this gilded bracelet design, we're going to be using some 8mm Czech Pearls. You can also use faceted Czech rounds, some 15s, 11s, and 8mm seed beads, as well as 4mm Potomac Crystal rounds. Again, you can use Czech rounds if you want to do that, or gemstones and really have fun with it. I also have here my clasp, which we'll be adding after the fact. To begin, I want you to have a size 12 needle. I'm using green thread. I could probably use white, but it's a little bit easier for you to see the green on the color as I'm creating it and making it. We're going to begin with our segments, each 1 by 1 by 1. You can make the whole baseline and then come back and add the fringes for this gild, but you can also do it in one consecutive unit. I'm going to place a stop bead on about 6 feet of beading thread. I'll go back after the fact and add the clasp on. So you want to keep in mind to leave enough thread at the end after that stop bead, probably about 10 inches, to make sure that you have enough to go in, weave back through, and get your clasp ready. So go ahead, get your thread ready on your needle, get a stop bead on with 10 inches at the end, and lay out your materials in little piles to get ready to start. So to begin our project, I have my materials set up along the top here, from biggest down to kind of smallest, and then going back up seed beads. I have 4 of my 8/0 seed beads on my thread with, again, about 10 inches prior to the stop bead. And I'm going to sew back through the first 3. So I'm re-sewing through the first 3, 1, 2, 3 in a row, coming out before bead number 4. That's going to put these first 4 beads into a right angle unit. These right angle units are going to work as connectors between each of my components as I build them. We're going to build them as building blocks all at one before moving on to the next component. From here, you're going to pick up 1 of your 8mm beads, whether or not you're doing Czech glass or pearls, or even some of the disco balls. That would look really pretty. And then I'm going to pick up another 4 of my 8/0 seed beads. Go ahead and let those 4 8/0s go down next to your bead here. Going back then to bead number 1, I'm only going to sew back through bead number 1 toward bead number 2. That's going to circle these 4 seed beads as well to look and appear like another right angle unit. From here, I'm going to go back through the pearl bead, which is going to straighten out that 8/0 seed bead so it sits and looks like the right angle unit is right on top of that bead. See how that just kind of sits there? When I get back to the bottom, I'm going to look at that first bead to sit on the other side of the pearl, see what side my thread is originally coming out of when I went through the pearl, and come into the opposite side of that 8/0. What that does is stabilize it and make it appear that the 8/0s are coming right out from the pearl, so they're kind of centered. Once you're out this 8/0 seed bead here, you're going to start adding your 11/0s. We're going to pick up 10 of our 11/0 seed beads. And once those 10 are on, I want you to go to the opposite side right angle weave through that same base 8/0 seed bead that sits right next to the pearl. Go to the other side and repeat. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Once you have those 10 on, you're going to sew through that 8/0 seed bead, as well as the first 11/0 seed bead that you added on in that first group of 10. Once you add that second row, you'll see how it cups around the pearl pretty beautifully right there and sits really nicely. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my little bits of trim. That's going to require my 15/0s and my crystals as I add them coming off of my 8mm bead. Coming out of that first seed bead there then, you are going to add your first little section of fringe. So your first little kind of gold piece to come off. You're going to include 3 15/0s, 1 11/0, 1 4mm crystal, and then downgrade the same. 111 followed by 3/15s. Looking along that base line of our 10 seed beads, I'm coming out of bead number 1. I'm going to skip over beads number 2 and 3 and sew in to bead number 4. It's just going to sit basically off to the side right there. From here, I'm going to do the same thing 2 more times, adding in 3/15-ohs, 111, 1 crystal, followed by another 11, as well as 3/15s. Coming out of bead number 4, I'm going to sew through the next couple beads. Trying to get my knot out here, just a little twisted. Okay, so dropping that down next to the project, you're coming out of bead number 4. You're going to skip over 5 and 6, and you're going to sew through bead number 7. One more time for that same rotation. 3 of your 15s, 111, 1 crystal, 111, 3/15s. Skip over beads number 7 and 8 and sew into bead number 9, through the 8/0 and into bead number 1 on the opposite side of that fringe section. You can see how they're kind of sitting off to an angle and tilted a little bit. Don't worry, as we get our next layer, these will lay nicely and kind of lay right along the side. I'm going to repeat the exact same thing on the opposite side, adding in those same 3 little peaks on the sides of my pearls. From here, I'm adding in my last of my little section, and I'm going to go back through that last 11/0 over to my 8, through my first bead here, and exiting. And I brought it in closer so you could see then that I'm going to go up through those first 15-ohs, up through the 11/0 on the side here. So I'm going up that first kind of row of beads and through my 4mm crystal. That sets me up now to do my final addition of my 15s and my crystal. Coming out of 1 crystal, add 1 15, 1 crystal, another 15, and go over to the next crystal and sew through. That's going to link those 2 together. We're going to do this 2 more times, adding in 2 more crystals with a 15 on each side, then linking over again to the next crystal. You can see that pulled those 2, so you're going to end up with a total of 5 crystals on the exterior. When you get to the exterior of the first side, go down through the first 11/0, as well as the next 3 15s. Give a tight pull. Sew through, once again, the 11, 8, 11 combo, right at the base of the pearl. And then you're going to repeat the same thing on the opposite side. So on the opposite side here, I'm going to go up through my 15s, up through my 11, out through my pearl, out through my crystal, and then link those 3 crystals that I already have there by adding 2 more crystals with a 15-0 between each, then sewing through the next one. Again, adding a 15-0, adding your crystal, 15-0, sewing through the next one. When you sew through the crystal sections here, you just want to make sure that that thread is not twisted around the piece. That's going to be your first component. You can see how beautifully those seed beads line up. They look like they're arching on the sides. And now what we're going to do is get ready to sew up through the project in order to add and create my next component onto my piece. So once you are finished with your secondary side, I'm going to go back down through the 11 and the 15s, through the 11 right after it. Pull that thread the whole way through. I'm going to sew through the 8/0 seed bead and only the 8/0. I'm going to sew through the pearl. And when I exit the purl, I'm going to sew through my 8-0 that sits right above, sew through your bead that's on the left-hand side of that little right angle weave looking area, sew through that top bead, and this bead now is going to become the base of my next bead section. So once again, I'm going to do my purl here, let that drop down next to the piece, add in 1, 2, 3, and 4 of my 8-0 seed beads, sew back through bead number 1 to create a circle, push that down next to the purl, back through the purl, so that way that sits right on top of it, and back through that 8-0 seed bead. See how my thread's already coming out that right side? I'm going to make sure to take the thread over and go through the left, so it's an opposite side, so that way that bead sits correctly. From here, once again, do your 10 beads on. And through. One more time, 10 beads on. Once you have those 10 beads on, through that 8 over at the base, as well as through that first 11-0 seed bead. So you can see right away there I'm set up to do my next little crystal section. Now the difference, and these look like a great pair of earrings, just like this. You could hang one more pearl off the bottom, just some ideas. From here, the only change that we're going to make is we are going to tie our first 2 11-0 seed beads on either side together. We're going to square stitch them together here, and that makes sure that it lays correctly. Coming out the first one here, I'm going to add my 3 of my 15-0s, my 1 11-0, and then I'm going to go back to the previous one and sew down through the first 11-0 that's going to sit right next to it. So you're sewing through that first. See that little connection there? From here, go back up through your 11-0 that you just added, square stitching those together. You're just going to see the tiniest bit of thread from one to the other. Give a nice tight pull and proceed like we did. In goes your crystal, followed by an 11, 3 15s, skip over 2 beads, and sew into bead number 4. And you can see how that first crystal connection then gets those to lay right next to one another. I'm going to continue then doing the exact same thing. 2 more on this side, 2 on the other side, and then I'll show you how we connect again as we build our third and final little fringe out from the pearl on the left-hand side. So I'm on my last petal connection here, and I have on my thread and needle. Coming over, I'm on that third one on the secondary side. I have my 3 15s followed by 11, crystal 11. I'm going to go over to the opposite side, the one right next to it, go down, or sorry, go up through rather, up through that 11-0 on the secondary side here. That's going to link the 2 together. Go down through the 11-0 that's sitting next to the crystal that you're adding, and that once again square stitches them together. From here you're going to add your 3 15s. Let's see how that square stitch goes right there. And then once again I'm going to spin it a little bit just so you can see better. You're going to sew in to the last 11-0 seed bead there, through the 8, through the first 11, and out. Now we're going to go in on repeat, do the exact same things over and over and over again. So now when I go through here to add my crystals, I'm ignoring the fact that the square stitch is even there, or you can do the square stitch at this point. It's up to you. The more you know and the more you do beading, you can realize how you can change up the pattern in regards to the order in which you do things. From here then I'm going through my first crystal. Once again back through and doing 15, crystal, 15. Through the next one of my 4s. And then again, 15, crystal, 15. Through the next one. Down through those beads on the side. Through the 11, 8, 11. Up through the beads on the opposite side. And then finish off connecting those 3 crystals that already sit there. Once those 3 crystals that already sit there are connected, then you're going to sew again back up through the pearl and start this all over again. Once you're at the end of your bracelet, and you can see how it has that nice live action look, that it is going over top of one another and having that kind of ribbon look to this gilded bracelet. You're going to attach your clasp. I've already done one side of the clasp and just need to add my Rivoli glued on top, and I'm going to do the other side as well. The technique for both of these is going to be the same. And what you're going to do is coming out of your last little right angle weave section here, you're going to add your clasp. For both sides, I have 2 seed beads that I'm going to use to go up through the clasp and down and connect. Anytime you're adding a clasp or a closure, you want to make sure that you have multiple pieces of thread going through that area. So coming out the 8/0 seed bead there, I'm going to add 1 and 2 of my 11/0 seed bead. Pick up my little tongue there of my clasp, put on 2 more, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to sew back through that same 8/0 seed bead. You can see I have just a little bit of a tail there because I had to start a new piece of thread further back. As I pull this then, I'm going to reinforce once again this clasp. So again, 2 to 3 times around. Going through then and adding the 2 seed beads, through the clasp, and then through the 2 seed beads that sit on the opposite side of the clasp. Once you're through there, you're going to go back through the 8/0 seed bead after pulling your thread tight to make sure that you have no extra thread showing. Going back through that 8/0. And then I'm going to sew down into the project. So I'm going to sew back into that right angle weave, a couple stitches back, maybe through the pearl, into that right angle weave section there, that grouping of 4 again, and simply tie off the thread end. Once you tie off the thread end, you can usually, again, like I said here, feed it back through, tie it off, and then take your thread burner. You can see right where I did this side here. Take your thread burner and burn down the extra thread that's at the end of this gilded bracelet. You want to make sure whatever end it sits that your trigger or your tongue is sitting up, you want to make sure that it is likely that your bezel set clasp on the other side is also setting up. So once again, I'm just going to take some glue in my Rivoli, and finish up my beautiful ribbon and gilded style bracelet. Thanks so much for joining me in the creation of this beautiful gilded bracelet. I wanted to try it on just so you could see its nice thick look to it, while it has that lacy look that gives it a nice delicate and bright and shiny glare on it. Remember, if you do need any materials, go ahead and check out the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give a little thumbs up. You don't want to miss anything here at Potomac Beads. We love to keep you informed and to make you a better beader, so make sure you subscribe. In addition, if you haven't yet, do any comments below, give your opinions, let us know what colors you like, what changes you may have made, modifications to the counts of beads or the size of crystals, or even included some other little fun things like drops or some changes of beads around the edges. You can also share your photos of your gilded bracelet in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. As always, thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your brand new bracelet.